Hello everyone. So, as some of my long-term subscribers will know, a while ago I did a couple of videos called Doctor Who Sucks, where I basically complain about the new series. And I stopped doing them. I didn't do any more because I don't really like complaining about things. I mean, I like discussing things, but as you may know, the new series isn't exactly my favourite. So I didn't do any more of that. And lately I've been looking on YouTube and I've seen so many. It doesn't matter if it's about Doctor Who, but people complaining whether it's about Marvel, Star Wars. All people seem to do on YouTube now is complain and moan about things. So I thought I'd try and inject a little bit of positivity into YouTube by doing what I'm going to call Doctor Who Rocks, where I'm going to go through all the Doctors. Actually, I'm going to miss the last Doctor, the female Doctor, because I've only seen 2 of her episodes, so I can't really comment on the series as a whole. I'm going to start off with the Doctor that got me into Doctor Who, and that was the Peter Cushing Doctor. Now, if you're not familiar with this, they basically made movie versions of the first and second Dalek stories. There's the Daleks and the Dalek Invasion of Earth. Dalek came on screen in colour. It was at the height of Dalek mania, so everyone was screaming for more Daleks, and they are just really, really fun movies. Yes, they're pretty much exactly the same as their TV counterparts, except the TV counterparts are a lot longer. Dalek Invasion of Earth, I think, is probably one of the best stories because it isn't over in 45 minutes. That's one of the things, and I said I was going to be positive, but one of the things I don't like about New Who, the stories are resolved too quickly. Yes, there are some classic Who stories that do take a long time to get anywhere, like normally you have to wait until the end of the first episode to see a glimpse of the monster, but anyway, so that the Peter Cushing ones were my first introduction, A, to Doctor Who, and B, to the Daleks. So I think if I'd started with maybe a cyber story, I would have been more interested in the Cybermen, but fate has it, I was into the Daleks. For those of you who haven't seen the movies, I strongly suggest you check them out. Yes, they were made in the 60s, but they are still very much watchable, and they're a little bit cheesy, but they've got some really good effects. The Daleks fire smoke instead of lasers because I think it gives a nice practical effect, although there is a bit of an issue with Daleks firing gas because there isn't that much control of it. Like if you wanted to kill a specific human, you would have to basically have everyone else hold their breath, or if I think it's the sort of gas that can kill on contact. It's movie logic. One of my favourite sequences from Invasion of Earth is the attack on the Dalek spaceship, mainly because of the music. Like there's a sequence where you've got the Robomen marching up the ramp with that music, really kind of like strong dramatic music. You've got a companion hiding in one of the storage lockers, and she ends up trapped on the ship. Actually, that's one thing they did change. The Doctor and his friends are still trying to they're still trying to robotize them, but they're actually rescued by the rebels. The guy still gets robotized, and you don't know about it. Well, you know about it, but the characters don't know about it until to the very end. The Daleks. I actually saw the Dalek Invasion of Earth first, and then the Daleks, and I don't think I found out they were movie versions of the TV until much later on. Yeah, that was it, because I was going through a car boot and this guy had recorded on, I think it was on UK Gold, a load of Doctor Who's, and the only one I was interested in was Invasion of Earth, so I grabbed that. But I mean, you can see I've got the DVDs here. I don't think I have all the first Doctor DVDs. I think there's a few that have escaped my collection, but at the top of the wardrobe behind me I have all my VHSs, so we'll be talking about episodes that I've seen that aren't in DVD collection. So Having said that, let's move on to the series. First episode, Unearthly Child. I'm going to say a little bit of controversy. Not my favourite episode. Yes, it is an introduction to Doctor Who. It's a very interesting story. It's more character based because obviously you've got to introduce the characters. I love the fact that the Doctor is basically a grumpy old man. He doesn't set out to be a hero. He doesn't see these humans and thought, oh, I can take you on a time. It's literally an accident. It's like, great, now I'm stuck with you, sort of thing. And all those people that say the Doctor is never violent, there's a scene in this episode when there's an injured caveman, and the Doctor thinks, well, the group would move better if he wasn't here. So rather than getting him to stay behind or trying to understand, he picks up a rock and is going to kill him. Now, yes, it's not exactly the nicest moment, but it just shows how alien the Doctor thinks. Like, he almost doesn't regard... He sees the survival of the group more than the survival of the individual. And it's just really interesting to see how he changes from that to someone who would sacrifice himself for one person, sort of thing. I have to admit, I haven't watched this in a while. I do remember the caveman stuff, and they also linked... it starts off with the two teachers, Ian and Barbara, having issues with Susan because she's always arguing about whether history is wrong or science is wrong, because obviously she's more knowledgeable than them. Why she wanted to go to school on a primitive planet, I don't really know. Maybe it was just to give herself some perspective. Yeah, so not my favourite episode, but one of the most important. Speaking of important, basically the story that saved the series. The Daleks basically were a last minute thing. There was going to be another story that fell through, I believe, and they had these guys ready to go. Again, it's a long story. The runtime is... where is it? 174 minutes. 2 hours... yeah, over 2 hours. And for a very simple story, that's a long time. One thing with classic Doctor, well, especially with the first Doctor, you have to have patience. This is the sort of thing that I would put on while I'm doing some animation, and just have it in the background. And again, they're very, very character based. You get to know everyone pretty well. Like, there's a whole... They don't rush through the petrified forest. They actually take their time. Then they have the whole sequence when they're suffering from radiation sickness. And rather than... This is one thing where I think the series is better than the movie example. The scene where Susan is told to go on her own into the petrified jungle to get the medicine for them, you really see her struggle with the fact that she has to. Like, first off they convince her, and then she is literally terrorising through the forest, and she gets to the TARDIS, or the ship as they call it. They seem to go from the ship to TARDIS quite freely. But she's there, she's in the TARDIS, and she's breathing a sigh of relief. Then they knock at the door. She's like, "Oh, what was that?" People said that the classic companions screamed a lot. I actually think their screams are more terrifying. One of the best screamers, if that doesn't sound weird to say, I think actually was Nyssa. She had a real kind of like blood curdling. She only did it a few times, but bloody hell, I think someone was trying to murder her. Yeah, so, and one of my favourite scenes from the Daleks is actually at the very end when the Dalek is pleading with the Doctor to save them, and he's like, I don't know how, and then it just kind of like spasms out, flicks its eye stalk up, and dies. It's sad actually, because I wonder if, because there's a lot of fan theories about how, because obviously in Genesis of the Daleks you see them with solar slats and they're a different colour. There was a fan theory that these Daleks are actually from the future, and so the Doctor's seeing them in like reverse. So that's how in Evil of the Daleks they gave what was his name, Waterfield, a load of likenesses of the Doctor. That's how they knew he could change, sort of thing. Because I don't think there's ever a scene where the Daleks basically examine like the Doctor and say, "Hang on a minute, you're that same guy. Your DNA is kind of slightly different, but it's pretty much, and you have knowledge that only he could have." And they suddenly know that the Doctor can change, which is, it's interesting. It's just one of those things that's never really cleared up, unless I'm missing a piece of fiction, which is possible. Okay, next episode. I have to admit, I've only ever seen this once, and from what I remember, it takes place in the TARDIS almost exclusively, if not all exclusively, and it's basically where the ship starts going wrong. It's only 47 minutes long, so it has to... That's probably why it's only in the TARDIS. So, sorry, can't really say much about that. One of my favourite non-Dalek stories. This is actually a good prime example of how Doctor Who can do kind of history, where Barbara is obviously a history teacher, and she is very much interested in the Aztecs, and a chance to actually interact with them is too great a chance for her to resist, and she is mistaken for a goddess, and she obviously knows the history of the Aztecs, so she wants to save them, and it's really nice to see her turmoil, especially at the end when she realises she can't. That history has to play out. There's some really good acting as well, and especially when the Doctor is put into the retirement garden and he kind of falls in love with this woman, which is kind of nice. And then you got the really creepy, if you can, that guy there, the one with basically the blood stain around his mouth, the butcher. This was one of, there we go, Sensorites. This was one of my earliest Doctor Who's I saw. I think it was actually the fourth one I saw. Might have been. But basically, it's a good example of not showing an enemy. Well, they're not really an enemy. They don't become an enemy until, well, one of them does, until like the later half of the story. But this is a good example of classic Who. There's no big battles. This is when sci-fi wasn't just about, gunfights. It was more about a story. And you've got Susan's whole, basically her growing up and confronting her grandfather, saying, "Look, I'm not a child. I have my own opinions. I have my own thoughts. I don't always have to do what you say. Just because you're older than me doesn't mean you can boss me around." And the Doctor doesn't like that at all. And I actually found one of my favourite things is when the crazy crew member, the one that's been affected, the mineral, I can't remember his name. What was his name? John. When John, I was thinking Frank or something, goes from being kind of like broken to fixed, and he actually is instrumental in saving the day. And then it turns out humans are actually the big villains in this, which is quite cool. It would be nice to see the Sensorites back, but I don't think the writers could do them justice, to be honest. I'm going to have to actually skip this one because I've only just opened this. I bought a load of Doctor Who DVDs a while back when they were like $6.99 or cheaper, and I have never watched this episodes. So a real Doctor Who fan here. Planet of the Giants. A really, really, really fun story. A very simple story, and has not many actors. There's not really there is a villain in it, but he's not trying to kill the Doctor for being the Doctor. and he isn't actually trying to kill the Doctor at all. It just happens, his actions. And I don't know the actor, but he's got a he was in I'm sure he was in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He played the director of the studio, of the animation company, and he's just got a really kind of distinctive face and voice. One of my favourite bits is where they're walking through the what they think is a cave, where it's actually the pavement, the cracks in the pavement, and a giant bumblebee falls down, and it's just like someone's just throwing a giant plushie at them. It's so cool. Again, with classic Doctor Who, you focus more on the story than like the effects. You can see them trying new things, trying to make it look as real as possible, but yeah, it's just sorry, I'm just looking at one of the screencasts, and one of them is Barbara facing that really hideous fly. The Dalek invasion of Earth. As I've said before, a really fun story, and a lot more in it than the movie. It's pegged as more of a it's got more of a war feel to it. Like in the movie, yes, you see the destruction, but everyone seems a little bit too happy. There's a scene where the Daleks are broadcasting over the radio, saying you will be destroyed if you don't surrender. Daleks are the masters of Earth, that sort of thing. And there's a girl in the background who is basically in bits. She's broken, she's crying, and this woman just basically drags her away. And the character of is the guy in the wheelchair. What's his name? Dortmund. Actually, funny thing is, I just got movie Tyler yelling at me, Dortmund, come back. He is I think he's a more tragic character. He's obviously more beaten up and raggy looking, and yeah, it's oh, that was it. The way they beat the Daleks in the movie is they basically cause the bomb to detonate differently. They do it in so that when they release the bomb, Ian has already, in both movie and TV, Ian has already jammed up the tunnel so it will stop. He does it in the movie because he hears the Doctor telling him to, because he's hiding in the shaft. Ian in the TV series does it of his own accord. It's like his own idea, which is interesting. And when the bomb detonates in the movie, it releases a lot of magnetic energy that pulls the Daleks into the core or crushes them, which is fun. It's a really cool sequence, but it does raise questions of why aren't people wearing, say, like metal in their trousers being sucked in, or people with fillings, or anything metal like buckets, tools, the railway that they're using the carts for. Anything is sucked in. So it's cool, but if you look at it too much. But in the series, they basically sabotage because these Daleks have collection discs on their backs. That's how they're able to move around, because they don't have the solar slats yet. And they get their power from a big transceiver, it's beaming energy to them. They basically sabotage that, and it overloads and destroys them, which is kind of cool. There's a point of view of the Daleks when it's so I just remember there's a really funny bit where the slaves are rebelling, and they've picked a Dalek up and are spinning it around. The Robo Rebellion is a lot more successful in the series as well, because you see a few Robomen with their headgear off, kind of running, which is weird, because in the series it's more of a brutal transformation. Trying to remember. Oh, you've got this romance between Susan and what's his name? I don't know his name. Something that I'm a bit disappointed is in the series they never went back. The Doctor never went back to Earth to see Susan. He never went to check on her, all that we know of. I think in the audios they have. That might be something interesting to do in the new series, although I don't think they'd take the risk, because people wouldn't really, new fans wouldn't know who Susan was. So overall, very, very good story, and actually quite a heavy DVD because it's got 2 discs. There's a lot more in there. Again, another one I can't comment on because I haven't actually seen it. It looks a bit. Oh, it's got Vicky, and that's probably why I haven't seen it. The giant bumblebee people, the Menoptera, and stuff. This is one of those episodes where I was watching it and I was like, "What is going on? I have no idea." Some of the, I'm just looking, they're actually quite cool. The bee people, what they call the moth-like Menoptera, and the giant insects known as the Zarbi. The Chase. This was going to be the 3rd movie actually, but they cancelled it because I think either people weren't interested or the budget wasn't big enough. I don't know. I'm glad they didn't, because this is another long one. It's 148 minutes, and I think it would have been a mess, because this story is kind of a mess, but it's a fun mess, and it introduces the mechanoids, and also Fred the Dalek. For those of you who don't know, basically the Daleks invented a time machine, a TARDIS, which is another thing that gives credence to the Daleks, the Silver Daleks being from the future, because not only do they have a functioning time machine, it's also bigger on the inside than the outside, which is quite fun. And you also have those really, really cool Dalek guards that are basically stuck to the ground. They don't have a fender. They are like permanent guards. And the really weird trees that eat people, and the you're introduced to Stephen as well. I forgot about that. There's quite a good little blooper. It's actually in the show where it's the first planet they're on. I can't remember what it's called, but it's the desert planet, and they get captured by the people that live there because they want to sell them to the Daleks, so the Daleks will leave them alone. One guy gets beaten up and he kind of slinks off to the back. They need to see the actor kind of stand up and run off to the side. Then all of a sudden he's there, and you have the awesome mechanoid Dalek fight, which is very, very cool. The mechanoids should have appeared more. They did a couple of audios with them, or maybe just one with the 6th Doctor, which was quite fun. And it's actually revealed in that the mechanoids were re-engineered by Davros to be the ultimate Dalek fighters. That's why the Daleks were beaten by them. Has that really cool sequence as well, where you got a little tiny mechanoid going along a big city model, and so it's when you think of it, it just brings back memories. When Stephen's talking about the mechanoids, he just leans over and calls them my fat little darlings. It's very, very cool, fun episode. Oh, you got the really weird I am Count Dracula, but the guy's miming it, and he's got the really wobbly fangs. It's just fun, a lot of fun. The Time Meddler, a very, very good story. This was one of my first fan stories I wrote. I don't really write fan stories, but we were told to write a story basically continuing something that was never continued in college when I was doing media, and this is before I saw Dalek's Master Plan, or bits of it. And so I wrote a story about how the Time Meddler, the monk, was in modern day trying to basically restore his TARDIS. I didn't know that he actually did, but anyway. I love this story because it's a simple one. The villain really isn't evil. He's just time meddling. People think he's the master, but he's not. And there's the bit where he's got the Doctor locked up, and he's like, "You gotta come out," and the Doctor says, "Go away," and he just throws a glass of water at him. And they're really, really over the top Vikings. The guy with one eye patch, and he's like, "You and Wagner go that way." And they're like, "Okay then, we'll let you join the fleet." Yeah. And yeah, that's something that never made sense to me. There's a bit where the Doctor is at this campfire with this native woman, and he hears the monks singing, and then all of a sudden he looks at the fire and pokes the bowl, and the music kind of goes weird. So is that I've never understood, is that meant to be a speaker, or is it just like another recorder that is remote controlled? I don't know. Maybe I'm being dumb. The War Machines. Another one of my earlies. This might have been my second Doctor Who story I ever saw, as in series Doctor Who. And the first time the Doctor is referred to as Doctor Who, because the main computer goes, "Doctor Who is required." Sound like an ice warrior then. And it's nice because the Doctor doesn't have to go through the whole fighting of getting authority. He basically pretends to be a scientist, which he is, and then gets in on with this. He's like a member of Parliament or something, isn't he? He's like no, he's Sir something. So he's got a lot of power. And then you also meet Ben and Polly, and Dodo is there, and yeah, she just disappears. She at one point she gets hypnotized by the killer robot, and tries to kill the Doctor. No, she tries to lure him to get taken over, so he can help the machines. And then she goes away to the country, and Polly basically says, "Yeah, she's staying here," which is a bit of a naff way to go out as a companion, but oh well. I actually think Ben and Polly are really, really cool characters. Well, for one thing, Polly's gorgeous, and Ben's a military man, so you've got the strength and the beauty to help the Doctor. The Doctor was, especially when he was older, he did need younger companions, so basically so he could boss around, teach, and get them to do stuff. Yeah, you got a really, really fun homeless guy as well. Here you go, I'm not doing nothing. I went, what kind of nut house is this? And finally, to round off the first Doctor, I know I've missed a few, but they're either ones I haven't seen or don't own. So the final one, 10th Planet. Actually, this was, again, one of my early ones, so I didn't really see them in order. And I've got it on VHS, and this is when it had the Telesnaps one at the back, so that was a bit of a shock to get to. Yeah. So, and the animation one of this one is really good, actually. It's animated by Otter King, who, if you aren't familiar with his work, search the TIE Fighter short. He did do a lot of Doctor Who stuff, but when he got work for Doctor Who, he had to delete it all, which is a shame. But his Doctor Who animations are really, really good, and they still exist on YouTube, so look them up. But yeah, the final episode of the first Doctor. Some really, really good acting in this. Some dodgy acting as well, especially in the space with the American and the Australian. And of course, the first appearance of the Cybermen. They're very, very creepy, cloth-faced Cybermen. They will not return. That's the thing. They had names as well, which was quite cool. Where they're looking at the periscope, it says, "Hey, Tito, look at this! It's a woman." "Yeah, sure. I want a woman." And they all rush. It's like, and they all get called for flustered penguins or something, which is quite cool. Yeah, Ben and Polly have a decent part in this as well, because she convinces the scientist to basically betray the general, and Ben takes out a few Cybermen, and he actually regrets it as well, which is always nice to see. Yeah, so that concludes this part of the video. If it's too rambly, let me know, and I'll try and condense it for the second Doctor. I'm going to split them up into parts. This one technically had 2 Doctors in, but I wanted to get the Peter Cushing Doctor done as well. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to let me know your comments. feel free to let me know your opinions on the first Doctor. I probably will watch the episodes I haven't missed at some point, so I might go back and say what I thought about them. But yeah, thank you very much for watching.